Table Talk with Brenda Perryman is brought to you by Livingston Family Dentistry.
Livingston Family Dentistry knows that good dental care ensures overall wellness, and healthy teeth and gums can perfect your smile. With over 30 years of experience, Dr. Ronald and Dr. Blake Livingston take the time to explain every treatment. Their modern office and friendly staff are committed to making you feel comfortable, informed, and satisfied. Located at 13724 Woodward in Highland Park, call now 313-883-3050. If your teeth are not becoming to you,
then you should be coming to us.
Hello, and welcome to Table Talk with Brenda Perryman. And I'm so excited today because I have my men on. Would you introduce yourselves and tell what you do, guys, please?
Hi, I'm Ellis Liddell, and I'm not even going to try and, I see my voice is a little deeper today, but that's about whatever. ELE Wealth Management, I started the company 16 years ago now.
Congratulations.
And I've got employees that have been with me the entire time, so I'm happy to say that. Looking forward to 20 years.
Wow.
Chris Summerall, entrepreneur and public servant for the citizens of the city of Detroit, as well as outside of the city of Detroit. People told me, like, you help people outside too, so public servant.
Good morning. My name is Darnell McLaurin. I'm a public servant and also a union steward. If I may, Brenda, I would just like to add that right now there's a brother that needs some prayer. His name is Keon Boone. He's in the hospital suffering from a very aggressive form of cancer. So I just like to send some prayers his way.
He's my classmate. We're my classmate in the academy. Yeah,
Yes.
We came on the department together.
Oh, yes, prayers are going up for Keon. Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
Great guy, young guy, actually.
Yeah.
Husband, father of 2 young kids, 11 and 9. Just a very bad situation, but just wanted to send some love his way.
Yes, definitely. Oh,
I want to be the responsible wealth manager and say that just as with, you said Keon?
Keon.
Yes.
Yeah, just as with this gentleman, we don't know what life has for us, and that's why it's so important. The cheapest wealth building tool ever created was life insurance. Most guys don't consider themselves married or family until they have a child. If they marry a woman, they don't consider themselves a family yet. So just know, if you buy a house based on 2 incomes, you are a family. Get life insurance to bridge the gap. We don't know what accident, what illness, what's headed our way. So all I can say is make sure you protect those you love by protecting yourself.
do you sell life insurance?
We do. That's one of our number 1 planning tools, is to put it on. Like for now, I have seniors coming in. They're 60, 70 years old. They're saying, I want to leave some money to my kids, but how do I do that and still travel and enjoy it? Because they waited to 66 to retire, right?
Yeah.
And life expectancy for the average African American is only 82, 87 for women. So with that life expectancy, you still want to have quality of life.
Are they still able to get insurance? And
They are able to get insurance. Now, is it cheap? No,
right. that's
because
right.
they're probably on 2 medications by 66 or 67. If they're not on any medications, it's super cheap. Medication is what drives that.
Powerful information.
Okay, we have another person who's kind of chiming in. We have Darren Calhoun, who is our Table Talk member from Richmond, Virginia, and it's very good to have him on today, especially with some of the things that we're going to be talking about, because Darren's with the EEOC.
Good morning, Darren.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to hear your
Hey, Chris,
voice,
hey.
Trader. No,
And then you go.
I mean, he's all in Virginia wearing Michigan clothes, but you know, anyway,
Love the socks, Chris.
I forgive you. Well, our first topic was about the UCLA players, and as you remember, they were jailed. I believe it was early last week or something. The team was in China, and they said that they were allegedly, stole a watch and it's some other things.
Yeah, from a high-end store in Shanghai. near their hotel where they were staying. They had some free time, and they used that free time to do some things that they'll regret the rest of their life.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think that it's just a bonehead kid move. I mean, I don't attach this to him permanently like a tattoo. You know, I think that these guys were young. I don't even think that it was the items necessarily as much as just being young and inexperienced. Yeah, the thrill of it. You know, the Ball family is wealthy, and it's not a matter of, you know, them not being able to have things that they want. I think the youngest kid is driving like a Lamborghini or something now, or they've got access, and so I think that this was just a bonehead move. It does show a little bit of lack of leadership when I'm thinking about, you know.
Lack of leadership from whom?
Well, it's three guys.
Lack of leadership from who?
No, it's three guys. So keep in mind, you got three individuals there who made a decision to do something. So each of those individuals had a leadership responsibility.
The focal point, though, the reason why this is as big a story as it is because of the Ball family.
Correct.
So when I'm zeroing in on him because that's the meat and potatoes of the story. And so if he is from this you know, caliber, I would expect him to have a more of a leadership voice amongst his teammates, and this doesn't show it. So I think that while it was just a mistake, it kind of does show that maybe there's some, you know, some concern there as far as him being you know, a leader.
Darren, what were you saying?
Yeah, let's have some personal responsibility. Why not? I mean, these are young people who I'm sure were briefed on what's going to happen when they go overseas, what's going to happen when they go anywhere. And, you know, I remember when I was a kid, I don't come from a famous family. But my parents used to tell me, you know, what you do outside reflects on me. So whether you come from a famous family or not, have some personal responsibility and know that you can't steal. That's pretty simple.
Yeah, right. No, I would agree. Personal accountability, first of all. Secondly, I don't want this to, like Chris said, be attached to them for the rest of their lives. They were young men. They made a horrible mistake. Ironically, you're 6'7", you know, 6'8", in a country where everybody is 5'8". I mean, everybody's eye is going to be on you, right? So that was my first focus. Like, why would you go and do this when everybody is focused on you anyway because you're oddity to them? And so it was just a bonehead mistake. You know, I know they are on suspension right now. I don't want this to end their career. We all make mistakes.
Yes.
This is just, you know, magnified because of, I believe, the Ball family.
I want to mention one point. I remember when I was playing sports in school, and there's a sense of entitlement that even as athletes that we had. So game day, we would walk into this pizzeria called Mr. Gaddy's, and we would essentially steal because we would just go in and just eat and never pay. But because we were that team, and they would never say anything to us, right? Because it was like, oh, that's the team. That's what they always do. And it was a tradition. But so there's a sense of entitlement that may have been there that, oh, well, you know, that's, you know, you can have whatever you want. And that's attached to the athlete in our culture, right? And so I don't know the circumstances, but there's a huge culture of entitlement amongst these athletes that whatever they want, they can have, because from a very young age, that's what they've been given.
And I would agree with that.
Agree with you,
up until they go out of the country.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. I'm right there. You know, on the west side of Detroit at Pookie's pickup store, maybe.
Right.
But not in China.
They're bigger in China, though. Believe it or not, when they touch down, or as Trump would say, China, they're actually China. They're actually more popular and more of a even a bigger story star, and so it's hard to imagine.
You're right, but not at the Louis Vuitton store.
Well,
not at two other stores that they went to.
You know what? We'd be surprised
Maybe
with
get some Chinese food. I'm not sure.
I'm not justifying it, but I'm just
look
saying.
Look how easy it was to narrow this down, right? It's like we got two teams in the country. They all 7 feet tall.
But
they stand at this hotel. It had to
we're
be them.
presuming that it was a steal, like trying to tuck it. You know, I've seen famous people, athletes, and stuff like that. Hey, I like this. I want it, and it's out in the open. It's overt, and so they put it on. Thanks, and just walk out, and they get away with that stuff
Yeah,
like
but-
9 out of 10 times.
But those had people standing behind them.
No, I'm
in
not.
their
I'm not making an
entourage,
excuse. I'm
and
just.
they say, "Go ahead and film me." They're not just walking up to the Louis Vuitton store saying, "I like this $2,000 hand purse," and picking it up and walking away with it.
Well, I think it was
There's no such thing as a man
I
purse.
think it was
I said hand purse.
it was
With
the
no socks in the winter, I'm not sure.
it's the adventure of it all. My son was in China, and he also he played in Korea. So it was like he was land of the giants there. Anything you do, as they said, is noticed.
Oh yeah.
Anything.
Yep.
There is no way that you could walk around there. And I used to worry about it too, especially when he was in Hungary and lost his passport. I mean, just the fact of he's going around, he has no ID that's legal in that country, and so forth. You have to be very, very careful. And I just prayed. I'm glad he didn't get in any trouble, as I know of.
I'm set to go to China here pretty soon.
You are?
But now I'm
Go back.
on pins and needles.
Go back, right? You've
No,
been.
not go back. That was Korea. I've been to Korea, but I'm set to go to China here pretty soon. But certainly, you got to act accordingly. It's not Detroit. It's not the USA.
So let's
Right.
push this along. How much punishment do you think that they should have?
Because you remember Jameis Winston.
The crab legs.
I think
Right.
these
So
guys
crab
are,
legs,
are
right.
the embarrassment and shame that they're going through internationally, not just that. And keep in mind, the ball gentleman you're talking about was only supposed to play 1 year at UCLA
Yeah.
because they consider him
One
a
and
better
done,
talent
yeah.
than his brother,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
who's playing for the Lakers.
Yep.
So when
They
you
only
consider
average
They
that,
don't have that much talent.
he's had punishment already in this whole embarrassment. Trust me, these guys are feeling horrible.
Yeah.
This went all the way to this went all the way to the president, who had to intervene to get them out.
I'm still suspect about that. I don't know if he really did.
Trust me, they
anything.
still be in jail.
Yeah, I believe
For
they would too.
shoplifting. Now, listen, I've been to Shanghai several times. I bought clothes from Shanghai. As a matter of fact, this is a jacket that came from
Oh,
Shanghai.
Let me rub
And
you.
and let me just
Well,
say
it's
this
not
here.
America.
Let me just say this here. You are going to be noticed if you're African American in China. You're going to stand out. I took Teresa with me to China. She had braids because we were going to be on like a 10-day trip, so she had her hair in braids. And people stared at her everywhere we went. So I'm telling you, you're not going to be an African American and not get noticed in China. I mean,
Right.
you're already going to stand out.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But
Agree.
what do you think? How long do you think they're They said indefinitely for the season.
No.
Right.
Well, the coach said that.
Right.
He said they got to work their way back. But keep in mind, you may have two of them that enter the NBA draft anyway. Kids today only play 1 year big-time college. So they may miss out and just go straight to the draft.
Well, college basketball is so much more
Yeah,
exciting.
UCLA might be looking for the putting butts in seats, so they may lessen that till they've learned their lesson and all this other crap.
You think so? You think it won't
Yeah,
be?
I mean it's about money. It's
Yeah.
about money. They're not.
Now they have. I
looking
think,
after these athletes because of their want to make sure that these kids have a better way of life. They're looking for trying to make sure that they have people come into the game.
Well, keep this
And
in
the Ball
mind.
family happens to draw that out because
Yeah,
of this.
the administration actually,
know.
the administration actually said that they were in China for the purpose of recruitment of students to the United States, because they're paying full ride. There are no scholarships. They're paying full fare.
Right.
They're
And
paying international fees. They're paying out-of-state fees. All the fees are being tacked on. So,
Right. And UCLA is one of the biggest exchange student
There you
colleges. Right.
so
Right.
they were there for a reason, and that reason wasn't basketball. That reason was recruitment.
Right, absolutely. And, well, every team, most college teams, a lot of them do go somewhere else to play before the season starts. They'll go to Hawaii. They used to go to Puerto Rico.
Different
They go
tournaments and stuff
overseas.
like that.
Yeah,
One-
they do that.
Right. One of the things I hope come from this is the youth that's watching this unfold is that they learn something from it. They take something from this, that they really focus on their behavior, especially student athletes. I mean, you still have a personal responsibility or accountability for yourselves beyond what Darren was talking about. The fact that whatever you do out in the streets reflect upon your home bringing or your parents. So I hope they use this as a learning tool.
Now, I would
But see,
like.
the problem, though, with that is without consequence, there is no learning. There can be, very little learning. Oh, he went over to China, he stole, and he came back, so, nothing happened to him. What's going to happen? Nothing should happen to me. I'm an athlete.
Well, I don't know if it's a matter of 0 or 100. I think that, like Ellis mentioned, that there are consequences that come. Now, it may not be jail or suspension, but there's shame. Shame is a real life consequence. Having to stand in front of a camera and face an audience that are going to drill you, and that's consequence. And if you've ever had to.
25.
If you've ever had to bear your
shame in
sins
that.
in front of people,
Right.
you know that that's a lot harder sometimes than sitting in isolation for a little while. It's harder to face people than it is to be away from them sometimes. And I understand your point, though,
I
Darren.
agree with you until that next check comes. Why I need to be shamed? I'm just, speaking from that athlete perspective. Oh yeah, I'll be ashamed today, but I'll be, in this day, and I'm going to add a little politics to this. In this day and age, I'll be ashamed today, but I'll be president tomorrow.
Well,
Without
He's
shame.
17 though too. Like how long are you? He's 17. So less than a year ago he was 16. So how much do we want to drag this out into their life?
Okay, I just want to go into
Well,
something real
We're
quick.
I'm talking about the kids that are following them and looking at them. How long we want to drag it out to their life until they learn that they can't steal.
Those
That they're
kids,
17. Just because he was 16 a year ago, how much did he steal a year ago?
those
How much
kids'
is he gonna
parents
steal
have a
year from now?
responsibility to raise them to not if those kids, and I understand as a child I looked up to athletes as well, but it was ultimately my family and my parents' responsibility to differentiate right and wrong. And so those kids are already jacked up if their standard is the Ball family.
Well, two things. It's the hold on, Darren. It's two things. It's the responsibility of the parents to continue the conversation about this. They should continue the conversation. Secondly, let's look at Mr. Ball, the young Ball. This particular Ball.
Leangelo or whatever, yeah.
Leangelo.
I think it's Leangelo.
Anyway, let's look at his dad, who is very boisterous. A lot of people are saying, man, I wish he'd be quiet. And then some people say, yeah, let the brother talk. Let him do this and that. But what goes up can go down. And
Yep.
I think he did not speak on this initially. The father didn't. He's very, nobody's bigger than the game. And the father has a tendency to give that attitude of being bigger than the game because you have some great young players and so forth and so on. But there's still black men in America.
Right.
Cool.
And actually, Darren made his own point. When he said, what else did he steal just now, and I heard him say, what else? He's going to have to go through that the rest of his life. And if he's in the wrong place at the wrong time and something gets stolen, guess what's going to come back up? This incident that happened
Did it
in China.
before.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. You made your own point. Shame is exactly what he's feeling right now. All three of them. It's two
Yeah.
other guys. They're all feeling shame. They're wondering if it's going to impact their ability to get drafted because now
Sure.
every interview they have,
It's going to be brought up.
what's the term for stealing? Is it klepto?
Yeah.
Yeah, kleptomaniac.
Kleptomaniac doesn't know they stole.
Oh, they just did it.
Right.
It
Thief.
just kind of happened.
Yeah, kleptomaniac doesn't know.
Okay.
Or they just show up home with a bag full of stuff. Where did this stuff come from?
Louis Vuitton.
I'm a klepto.
But let's move on to the next topic, which deals with, I guess, the topic of the week or so, which is sexual harassment. We can't end sexual harassment if we make it a partisan issue. Sexual harassment has been on, it's like every walk of life. And we talked about this a few weeks ago,
Right.
Ellis. Do you get, as being a member of the, being with the EEOC, have you gotten a lot of sexual harassment filings, Darren?
I can barely hear you.
I said being a member Okay, being an EEOC director, do you all get a lot of sexual harassment filings?
With violence, are you saying?
Filings, a lot of claims, sexual harassment
violence, yeah.
claims.
Well, until recently, no. The sexual harassment complaints, and I was reading this for a speech that I was going to do yesterday. The sexual harassment complaints had been declining. But now, and like I said a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this on the show, I explained to my investigators, right now, there is a wave of empowerment going on where people are feeling more empowered to come out and speak, and not just the victims, but the witnesses. And that is where all of this gets exposed. So
Darren,
I think that the harassment complaints are going to be on the rise. I can't really study that yet until they happen, but I hope so. I hope it rises.
Now, from a workplace
Because it should
perspective,
happen.
from a workplace perspective, Darren, what's the statute of limitation on that?
300 days. It depends. I shout out 300 days. In Michigan, it's 300 days.
So
It's
300
the
days.
statute itself says 180 days unless you have a fair employment practice agency that does the same thing, a state agency that does the same thing, and then the time is extended to 300 days.
Is that
So most often it's 300 days because most states have fair employment practice agencies.
okay? So is that
From the date of harm.
okay? And that's any case, not just in the work setting.
Say again?
Is that in any situation, or that's just the work setting as it relates to?
That's just employment. That's just for
Okay.
employment. Now, in order to bring a complaint into court on employment situations, you must first go to the EEOC or to a fair employment practice agency. Now, there are some situations that are occurring like that pedophile down in Alabama. That's not an issue of employment. That's just sexual assault on minors. That's not even sex harassment. That's just
And one other,
that's something different. But to bring a damages suit, it's usually 3 years.
Yeah, those ladies in
Okay.
Alabama would love to know that you've gone on record to declare Moore pedophile.
Yeah, anybody who
Yes.
this is my own personal opinion.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the EEOC because it's not employment.
right
Now,
now,
anybody who's 30 years old who tries to date a 16-year-old is pedophile.
so I do
That's
have
just
one.
me. That's just Darren. Everybody, to each his own. But to me, if you came after my 16-year-old daughter, I had two daughters, and one is 30 now and one is 23. If a 30-year-old came to my house or tried to talk to my daughter while they were 14 and 16 years old, me and my two boys would have been dealing with them. Me, Smith, and Wesson.
Yeah, okay.
Right, I do have one question, Darren. Being a director or EOC, can you give us the clinical definition of sexual harassment?
Absolutely. That's a great question, too. Any form of harassment, not just dealing with sex, there are certain things that have to be met in order to show that it's actually harassment. I would like to read it to you.
Well,
But what sexual harassment is unwanted, unwelcome comments or conduct that unreasonably interferes with the workplace.
okay.
So first, it has to be unwelcome. It has to be unwanted, which is pretty much the same thing. It has to result in a tangible job action, which means somebody gets fired, or gets demoted, or it creates a hostile work environment. And it doesn't have to be hostile like you did this to me. No, you did that to me. That's not the hostility we're talking about.
Uncomfortable.
The hostility that we're looking at is whether someone feels intimidated
Right.
to come to work. This boss is, every time I come around this person, she grabs me in the front of my pants. So I got to walk all the way around the building just to avoid her. That's what we're looking for in a hostile work environment. Then you also have to have a basis to hold the respondent or the company liable. One of the things is, like I said, the tangible work action. The company didn't take reasonable care to stop the harassment, like investigate it, to take immediate and appropriate corrective action. If it's a coworker, the company has to know about it. So it's a lot of rules, but your definition that you're looking for is unwanted, unwelcome conduct. In this case, of a sexual nature, it could be of a race, color, religion, national origin, age, sex, disability, genetic status, or sexual orientation. But any of those come into the workplace that unreasonably interferes with the employee's opportunity to do the job.
Well, so those are workplace scenarios. There are other things that happen. There are other things that, say, for example, that Roy Moore is accused of doing, coming into a mall and trying to talk to the young ladies working behind the counter. You know how teenagers get jobs at these malls. Or you don't even have to be a teenager. Somebody who comes every day looking at you and so forth.
You know, there was a popular radio host who was talking about how it kind of dawned on him the culture that exists in this country as it pertains to sexual harassment, but he actually termed it rape culture, right? And so, and it made me think, because, you know, I can think back into early on in school, you know, when girls first started having bras, and it was okay for a guy to walk up and pop their bra and pop it in the bag, right? And then you hear about unsolicited pictures that women get from men now, and that's just, you know, it's like blown off. It's just, you know, and it's a culture, and I think that while it definitely has to be stomped out and handled at the workplace, we really need to start looking at very early ages of how the sexes interact and what's acceptable, what's disrespectful, what's, you know, harassment or inappropriate at a very early age. I'm talking about 5, 6 years old, because that's when those habits begin, and those entitlements to be, oh, you know, I'm just playing with you, because that's how it's kind of like, you know, diluted. Oh, that was, you know, I didn't mean nothing about it. I was just joking
And
or whatever. And it's not a joke.
I'm going to say, too, because I love sitting around men. When I was younger, I liked sitting around guys because they were always funny to me. And sometimes it's some off-color things that happened in conversations, but, you know, you don't think about it as that because we all sitting around joking and friends.
Yeah.
But now the culture, I guess, does change because people are more aware.
But that's a good thing, though, because no has always meant no.
Right. Oh, yes, definitely.
Exactly.
No has always been
Definitely.
meant no. And guys get confused, and ladies too, for that matter. You get confused if you're on a date. You know, I heard people talking now. If I'm on a date, do I say to Brenda, is it okay if I give you a kiss? You know, that's not what you see in the movies. In the movies, he slides over, he whispers in your ear, he nibbles on your neck, and next thing you know, you're kissing with him, right?
Nibbles on my neck and I began to stir. Yeah. Anyway.
I think that's
Right.
more for men. We have to be more conscious and careful. And it's not really even careful if you're just that way. Like, but we do have to raise our younger men to have a level of understanding and respect and be mindful, because in this day and age, which everything goes, it's easy to get casual, right? And it's easy to think that, oh, you know, it's no big deal. Things are a big deal, and this stuff can be very detrimental to someone. I've had a number of my friends that so happen to be women, and years later they're talking about stuff that happened, and I mean, it really damaged them from years ago. And then so the perpetrator of that has moved on, and they, you know, if they
And probably doesn't remember.
they don't even think
Right.
anything of it.
Become president of the United States or something like that.
So, but yeah, I think the conversation
twice.
needs to happen very early. But it also, there needs to be dialogue on both sides, I think, as far as the men and the women. And then Terry Crews. Like, so Terry Crews recently came out and said that he was sexually assaulted. But it's interesting that the response that I saw, a lot of that was like, man, come on. It's a joke when men talk about any type of sexual assault or anything
Unless
like
there's
that.
another guy as a predator.
And
older guy.
even then, that's a joke. if you think about the
But
rape
it's-
culture that's
it's
in the
not a-
that's in the prison, it's made to be something funny, right? The overtone, it's not funny, of course, Brenda. I'm not saying it is funny, but it's played out in comedy and in the media, and it's like, man, that it's not as serious as a rape against a woman. You know what I mean? And because of the stigma attached to it, many guys won't even speak.
Right, Darnell? You had,
No, I totally agree with what Chris is saying. First of all, the whole physicality of it all. How does a woman rape a man? But it's been cases that were reported, and so guys do in the locker room. They laugh it off, like, for real. But
or a guy won't say.
or he won't say, and I believe that's what Chris' point is. It's crazy. So, but as far as women are concerned, I truly believe that women have to stand up, and not saying that they aren't. But if it happens, you have to call it out as it happens. And the only reason I'm saying that is, like Chris said, there's some women that he said he found out they were damaged years later.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because the issue was never addressed. And when you let that fester and stew for year after year after year, then that woman is damaged. And so
Carried into each relationship you go in.
exactly. And so it's a perpetual cycle. And I think in order to break it, you have to expose those individuals right when it happens. I understand a lot of women are in situations where I don't want to lose my job, I don't want to fight, I don't want to be looked at.
So what do you do?
But the alternative is hurting yourself for the rest of your life.
Right,
You
that's
know
true.
what I'm saying?
Well, you have to be able to trust the system, though. When you're getting ready
Correct.
to expose that person, it has to be a system that you can trust. You go to your supervisor and you talk to your supervisor and say, listen, so-and-so, he's at my door. I've asked him to leave me alone. He's out in my car when I go out to my car. And I don't want to, you really don't want that person. Sometimes that person has his own family and all of this stuff. You don't want to make them lose their jobs,
Right.
but they're hurting you. There's such a dilemma involved. So you tell this person, and they said, well, I'll call him in or something like that. And then all hell can break loose after that. All hell.
I know a woman
that's
who
when you call Darren.
Well,
Right.
see, yeah, you see that he wasn't thinking about, or he or she weren't thinking about their family when
They,
they were committing sex harassment. So that
Right.
should never be a consideration. And whether the victim says that they want anything to happen to the bad act, we call them bad actors. The bad actor is of no circumstance. Once a company is on notice that somebody has committed harassment or discrimination in any form, they're required to take immediate and appropriate corrective action. And if they don't,
They're
that's
liable.
that's the violation that goes against the company because they fail to take
but
any
what
action.
if that
So
person...
they don't have a choice.
What
They bring
about
it forward.
the person, he is the top dog, the top dog who is harassing this person who's working for them? They should go to the EEOC, correct?
They should come straight to us, yeah. I mean, and we have cases every day where the director of, not of EEOC, but the director of the agency or the owner of the company. I was looking at a case the other day where the owner of the company was accused of sex harassment. It's probably a very good case based on the evidence that we have. So that, when I was in Detroit, I investigated a case as an investigator where the owner said, well, when you come in here and when you cross the threshold, I'm God. Well, the EEOC was above that little God there because it cost him $55,000 for that one incident.
So I know of a situation just happened.
There is recourse. People should not feel that there is no recourse to go to. He's the owner of the company or he's the big boss. There's always somebody else.
So this just happened like 2 weeks ago. I was talking to a young lady, and I won't say which hotel where she works at, but she was being followed home by one of the temporary workers. And she noticed it maybe like the third or fourth day in the week. She had noticed him out by her car. Every time she went to her car, he was always somewhere around. So she started filming it on her telephone. Him sitting out by her car or her on the freeway, and he's following her.
Wow.
So she turned that information in, and then they fired the guy. My question, Darren, beyond him just being terminated, is there something that can be done either against him or for her? If that makes sense. That question makes sense.
Training.
Yeah, it does. As far as employment, they've taken care of the action. It will never happen at her job again.
Okay.
So they've taken care of that part. She needs to go get a restraining order.
There you go.
Okay.
Right.
You know, she needs to see that's stalking. It sounds like everywhere she turns up, he's right there.
Right.
That's
Okay.
stalking behavior, and it might be something may be triggered. And I'm just going by what's on the movie.
Well,
You know,
I'm going to
there's
ask.
a triggering action.
I'm gonna
that
ask
happens,
this
like him
question.
being fired now. Now
I'm
he
gonna
may
ask
go
this
bananas,
question
so she
before we
needs to
move on
She can get the police involved in
to-
that. It seemed to me.
Okay.
I want to ask this question of the three gentlemen and Darren, and you don't have to answer. I just want a yes or no. Have you ever thought back, with all this being in the forefront these days, have you ever thought back on something you could have said in your life to a young lady or a girl that could have been distasteful?
I'm going to use the line that I heard from General Sessions from Sessions this week.
I don't recall.
I don't recall. But yes, I can definitely say yes.
But you didn't know.
Of course not.
Okay.
But when I look back,
Yeah.
you question it. I mean, even if it was someone you asked out on a date, and they said yes, and you own that date, you know, you may have been a little too aggressive.
Yeah, okay.
And ever
Yeah.
since that, I've decided to be passive.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, people can read things into passivity that is not there either. We have a call. Steve is on the line. Hi, Steve.
Ms. Perriman and gentlemen, how are you?
Good,
Good
Steve.
morning.
Good morning.
You know, I will say this when it comes to the basketball players. Just thank God for when we were growing up, we didn't have social media and all these electronic devices. And it's like Mr. Liddell said, you know, you stick out like a sore thumb in China. You're over 6 feet tall, then you're black. So I'll say, that's it. I want to say with UCLA. I just tuned in and I don't know what you guys have covered, but one of the things I'm noticing, America is very, 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 very violent. I can't believe the amount of people that have been sexually assaulted. This is absolutely asinine, and we are not doing anything to stop it. We, as a society, and they try to tell us we're wrong or the young people are wrong for listening to this type of rap music, but when you got grown white men that have been doing the same thing that we criticize the young black folks for doing. So I don't know where we're going in America. I'm afraid that we've moved away from democracy and moved over to oligarchy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm afraid that people don't understand that I can be very violent towards you without putting my hands on you by simply passing legislation or policies against you. I'm afraid we have not moved the needle one iota since the 60s, since Malcolm, since Martin Luther King. We haven't moved the needle. Look at our conditions today. Most people, as Mr. Liddell can attest to, I think our freedom in America, because we don't own our name, is our money and what we do with our money. Most people don't even have a savings account. Do you know, I just read an article where most poor people are still using the liquor store and Payday America to cash checks. In 2017.
Right.
Yeah. Steve,
Where are we
Steve.
going in America?
Yeah,
So
Steve,
I really don't care about the basketball players, and this is not a disparagement against you, Ms. Perriman, in your show. I'm just saying we've got to stop majoring in minors when the conditions of our people we're nearly at checkmate. Our wages rival the 1970s, but yet our cost of living has gone up astronomically. Do you know how expensive it is to live in the city of Detroit, where you pay the highest water bills, you pay the highest auto insurance, you pay the highest homeowner insurance, but yet you don't even have wages that have grown with the cost of your expenses.
Okay, Steve, hold on. Ellis had something to say, and then I appreciate your call. You
Listen,
got to move on.
Steve wants us to do a whole show on what he's talking about because
Right.
it's needed.
It is a whole show.
It's worthy. I just left Cabo, Mexico, and in the city where you know all the guests are staying, you got these high rises and these beautiful hotels. But within a mile outside the city, you start seeing these little 500 square feet houses.
Shanties.
And it's just like the shanties in South Africa. And that's where the average person that you see cleaning your room lives, because they can't afford city costs. So what happens when the city keeps going up, cost goes up, you have to change, you have to go down to smaller housing. And trust me, they're getting ready to build some small houses here in Detroit.
Yes,
Exactly.
I saw.
That's why I
But-
said we're moving
well,
towards austerity. We're moving towards oligarchy. Anytime we've got senior
That's
citizens
a-
losing their home,
I
and they
got
don't
to
even have
get
a
to the
mortgage
next
because they
topic.
can't afford to pay taxes
hold on,
or the
Steve.
insurance.
Steve, thank you so much. I got to get to this next topic. Thank you so much, and keep watching. Thank you. That is true. What he's saying is true.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say
But-
that the harassment of women is not a unique factor to the United States. That
No.
is,
No, it's
you know,
worldwide.
it's
It's
worldwide,
worldwide.
Yeah.
and I think the United States just has the biggest stage to to kind of show it. But there's anywhere there's a woman and a man, there's sexual harassment in the world.
And I will say this here, this new wave that we're experiencing, this new wave, and Darren said it, is bringing more attention to it. So if you are a 20-year-old young man today, you have to get permission. If you're a 20-year-old young lady today, you have to get permission. And I know you're dating, and the young lady you had on earlier said they're dating now through swiping, through smartphones, through devices. So you're meeting people, and you're trusting that there's going to be some honor there. But no still means no.
Absolutely.
True.
There's this article, and we could talk about this forever, honestly, because I don't know if you all have been
You want
harassed,
to
but
show
I
this
know
one.
how it is to be harassed.
Well,
Anyway,
let me answer your question from earlier.
What?
Yes, I've been harassed. Yes, I've been accused of harassment.
oh yeah, you said
No, I've never harassed anyone.
right. But some people are so touchy. They misinterpret things too. Do you ever get those kind of cases where people have misinterpreted? Because it can be
Absolutely.
misinterpreted.
Absolutely. And Darren said it can be, because an advance is not an advance. Listen, some people are so lonely that when you smile, they think you're smiling at them.
Oh my gosh!
Sound like I got a
Can't
witness.
even-
Sound like I got a
You can't
witness
even be
here.
nice nowadays.
Say lonely.
You can't even be nice. You can't hold the door open. I ain't trying to get on you.
I didn't say lonely though. That's funny. I think people can be hypersensitive and say something like, "Oh wow, that's a nice dress," and then end up saying, "Oh, he harassed me." We get those all the time. That's not harassment.
Right.
You have the absolute right to file a charge, but it's not harassment.
So I
and
think
we close the case immediately.
it may end up being a cultural change of some kind. And I would like to say something about what Steve said about the basketball players. The thing is, if you are in Detroit or any place in Michigan and in this country, there are kids playing sports. And the other thing about kids playing sports, they travel. My grandson is traveling today and he's only 11, to another state to play football. You have to get into their heads what they can and cannot do. This is a big cross section of America and the world. These sports players, and sometimes these parents treat these sports players like they're superstars and they're
Yeah.
only kids, and they're like they're fans. So that gives these kids a sense of entitlement.
But also with the age of social media and interacting through mediums, right? So people feel more comfortable to go so far on social media, and then when contact happens with these young kids, they don't know how to act person to person, right? So they've got all riled up and, oh, when I see you, blah blah blah. And so, but because these kids, they didn't go out, they don't go out and play, so they don't know how to interact on the level that we did when we were younger. So when they do meet, they've already built all this anticipation up until where they haven't even met this person, and then the first time they meeting them, they're supposed to be hooking up.
Let me just say this here. Mothers who have sons. I remember when Dominique Wilkins was the thing. I was living in Atlanta, and I waited after a game one night because I was going to hang out with one of the basketball players. There were 150 women who were barely dressed, waiting for these guys to come out their locker room. And that's why Dwight Howard has double-digit babies. and his check that he gets is going to go out to child support as soon as he receives
Dwight
it.
Howard got that many babies?
Oh, absolutely. You didn't know that.
Boy.
So mothers, talk to your sons. Talk to your sons. And they're glorified athletes, but just bear in mind, they're human.
Right.
Leading the league in rebounds and baby mamas.
I didn't.
And
You
it's
know.
a diva
You know
all
what
the
was so
time.
funny? Let me just say this real quick. After I remember when I said to my kids, I have 3, a son and 2 daughters. I said, God, I'll be glad when I have some grandchildren. And my son said, Mom, your kids have to get married first. And I
Yeah.
said, dang, he said that? You mean I must have taught him something?
Exactly.
He was
But
listening.
let's talk quick about Colin Kaepernick. There's a column I sent you, an article that Imani sent me that said he should have been named Coward of the Year, as GQ had him as one of the Men of the Year,
Citizens of the Year.
Citizens of the Year. What do you think?
Let me just say this here. Of course, it was over a year ago when he first took his knee. And a knee is a symbol of humility. When you're knighted in England, you go down to one knee. So he went from a sense of humility, and there's some people out there took it and said, oh, he shouldn't be bowing on one knee. It's a threat to the military. It had nothing to do with the military. He also came out and mentioned, and I had never read it, that the third stanza of our national anthem talked about slavery
Right.
and how they're doomed for the most part, and they're less than. So he brought attention to that. Well, he wasn't the first athlete to bring attention to it. The first was, I don't know who the first verse was, but I know Jackie Robinson also said he couldn't salute the national anthem because of it.
Right.
So it came out. Now, did this take a life of its own a year later when the other football players started doing it? Yes. He did it for police brutality to bring attention to it. Other athletes did it for different reasons, and that's okay. It's okay for them to have done it for different reasons. But if I was the NFL, because I'm listening talking about your grandson is headed to play football in another state, let me just tell you, soccer is taking over the world. And it's going to take over here. When you start talking about Dan Gilbert and getting with other people to build a stadium here for soccer, that tells you where soccer is going. A lot of these guys that are playing football should be playing soccer.
My 3 other grandchildren play soccer.
They're going to make way more money than NFL players, and the life expectancy as a player
It's longer.
is a lot longer. It's not even comparable. So just know that we got some real issues that we face, but parents, as you're parenting your children, make sure you're preparing them for life after sports.
Absolutely.
Well, see, with regards to Kaepernick being a citizen of the year, I absolutely applaud that. I've been looking for the magazine myself so that I can put it on so I can proudly display it on my, living room table. I think he is he's epitomizing what it means to stand up for what you believe in. He happened to take a knee for what he believed in, and every other community is applying what his protest was. They're applying the military, they're applying the flag, they're applying the national anthem. And all he's saying is we need to stop killing unarmed black people.
Correct.
Stop the killing of unarmed black people by police. Let's just stop it. Or let's just talk about it. That's his protest. And everyone's trying to add on to this and the military this and that. I absolutely applaud.
I think people don't
and
want
I have been standing with Cap this entire season.
I don't think
and I
people want
absolutely
to,
applaud this award.
Darren, I don't think people want to talk about race. I think that's part of the bottom line. They don't want to talk about it.
Probably the most impressive thing to me, and sometimes I'm kind of a little obscure or whatever, the most impressive thing to me is...
Kind of.
Thank you, brother. Is really how impeccable his life must be, because they've combed through everything, looking for a reason to undermine and discredit his character. And so when I'm not really, we all know about the demonstration and things like that, but to think about the type of life he must live, right? His interactions with women, business dealings in the community, he must be a solid dude. He has to be, for them to not have been able to say, well, what about this 5 years ago?
Well, you just made
it's
me
impressive.
think, and I just thought about what Steve was saying. I thought about what all of you were saying. It made me think back just momentarily to Barack Obama, who they combed through his life, and they did not find any sexual harassment. They go into the President H.W. Bush, the old man. All these women are saying how old is he now? 90 what?
93.
But I've had a very prominent person. We were all taking a picture, and they put their hand right on my you-know-what during the picture, and I'm up there smiling, and his hand was right on my behind, and it was like I didn't know what to do. I just froze.
Did he know he had his hand on your?
Yes.
You don't think he was reaching for your back and you just happened to be tall?
He was tall as I am.
Oh, then he definitely was reaching
Right.
for your back.
Anyway.
Right. Here's what I want to say about Colin Kaepernick. First of all, he laid it all on the line. He knew the circumstances or the repercussions.
He'll never
the
play in the
consequences,
league again.
and he laid it on the line.
Yep.
And he took that stance. The conversation about race doesn't want to be had because race is an issue of black people. You know what I'm saying? White folks don't have a problem with race. They think it's insignificant. Your issue is insignificant. You got good jobs now. What you crying for? You ain't slaves no more. What you crying for? We ain't having that conversation. And that's ultimately what it boiled down to. Is Colin Kaepernick brought attention by taking a knee, and they made it something something else outside of race. When it's black and white, what he took a knee for, which was police brutality, which we knew through the whole police brutality thing came Black Lives Matter, right? And what was their thing for that? All lives matter.
And then now they've made it a kind of subversive group. It's been labeled. And they have not labeled the white supremacist groups like that.
There was some good people in that
was
crowd.
in the
There was some
hearings
good
the other
people in
day.
that crowd on
They
both
were trying
sides.
to say that Black Lives Matter was a racist identity, almost terrorist group. And one of the representatives asked Sessions, "Hey, look, what about KKK and the neo-Nazis? Would you label them, and did you create reports on them?" Well, I'd have to find out about that.
Well, I think you said that you don't think Kaepernick will ever.
No, he won't play in the NFL again. That's my own personal. Again, this season he's not playing in this season, and then being a year removed, it's just not going to.
I don't know. It may be
And
that
you
one.
know what? I
owner-
believe he's okay with that.
And I believe he's okay with that. But when I was just picking back off your point of the sacrifice that he was willing, because this is his career as his career as an athlete is what he's been training his entire life for, right? I doubt he's been training his entire life to be a social activist, right? And so for him to put that in front of what he dedicated his life toward, all those hours and injuries and long, it says a lot. But again, like what's most intriguing to me, one has been his poise, right? I imagine that I've been under much less pressure at times than him, and I've just, probably told somebody, "Shut up, leave me alone, get out of my face," or whatever. And so for him to not be on film or to be recorded or to have even witnesses or someone that they can even pay to come up with false allegations, right? Because that's what they do. They say, okay, well, you being a friend, here's $50,000 if you just say that nothing.
Right.
So that speaks up.
Yeah. Let me
And Roger Goodell is going to get fired off of this too. Mark my word.
Well, see. Also, I want to say this here: when you travel the world, race like we have in America, black and white, does not come up.
No.
You're Brazilian. You're a German. All right? So race is a false narrative. There's no such thing as a white person. If you want to find the whitest person, it's an albino of African descent. That's the whitest person on the planet. But white people that we consider white are pink. A little kid can tell you that. Oh, mommy, that pink person. A little kid can tell you that. So we buy into that narrative, but even white people who bought into the narrative are now saying, well, we really aren't white. And more of them are going to understand that you're not white.
And more,
if it's not beneficial, if it's beneficial
I gotta wrap,
to be white,
I gotta wrap. Who did you say was going to get fired?
Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL.
Darren, thank you so much, and we gotta turn it in.
All right, Darren.
Thanks, people, everybody
love
out
you
there
guys.
for joining.
Yep.
Love you
Peace,
too.
bro.
Thank you, gentlemen, for very enlightening. We could talk about one topic the whole hour, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
this was really like 4 shows right here
Oh.
that you sort of condensed.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just for you, Darren.
Okay, everybody, have a happy Thanksgiving and don't eat too much.